Yo.
Welcome back to Be Rad the Pod.
Hey.
Sup? Hey.
What's up? What's up?
We just did this crazy thing that you saw on the internet.
Yeah. We sat on the ground, cross-legged, knee to knee, both of our knees touching.
Yeah.
And you stare into each other's eyes for 5 minutes. You set an alarm and you don't break eye contact for 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'll link the thing in the show note. And like at certain points, I was like, man, this is an endurance event. But the 5 minutes kind of went by fast.
Yeah, that was pretty wild. I mean, I remembered vividly like doing that when we were in high school.
I know.
Maybe not for 5 minutes, but
But maybe like right before we were about to separate for different things, you know.
Sometimes, yeah, you and I were pretty wild. We just do like really trippy stuff like that sometimes in high school.
Yeah, true.
So,
what was going through your head?
There's like so many different phases to it and like different emotions. A lot of it is funny. Like you and I have a really comedy. We have a really good funny bone.
Yeah, well,
the two of us.
It was hard not to laugh.
Yeah, well, we were laughing a lot. We were
laughing.
giggling.
My cheeks were. That's why I kept doing the serious face because my cheeks were hurting from, from smiling so big.
Try to be serious, and then all of a sudden, I
was swallowing my smile.
I don't know. It was really fun. I went through phases of feeling like just laughing and like it was so funny, and then other phases of feeling a lot of gratitude and love, and then there was other times when I was just intent on like studying your eyeballs because I've always thought that you have really cool eyes.
Yeah, I noticed you were doing that, and yeah, that brought me back to high school because when we were in high school, you used to really, I could tell that you were taking your time staring at each eyeball when I was in high school. In high school, I was like, oh my God, he's paying so much attention to me.
That's really, it's funny. I've actually like your eyes are so unique. I've always thought about them.
Ah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You drew them for me once.
Oh yeah, I did, didn't I?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that was crazy. I mean, I kind of same thing, was going through phases. I mostly was trying not to smile. It was going through phases of like laughing because the situation is kind of hilarious. Anytime you try something like kind of woo like that, it's like there's always an air of hilarious. But at the same time, and then, on the other hand, it was the same thing. I was just like immense gratitude. And so that's both of those.
Yeah. I mean, you and I are super comfortable with each other, but like, it can be uncomfortable to do that. I mean, I remember in high school also, it's like exhilarating because it can be kind of uncomfortable. So I definitely recommend trying that. That was really fun.
Yeah, super fun. I kind of want to do it again. If we do, we'll keep you posted. But that was super cool. What did the person say in the clip that you saw?
It's basically all he said.
Yeah.
He just said, "Oh, you should try it." He was talking to his buddy. It's like, try this with your wife. Mm-hmm. So yeah, all of you out there with loved ones, go ahead and try this. It was pretty fun.
Yeah, I keep thinking like it would be pretty fun to try with my sister too. Someone else.
Yeah.
She's probably the other person in the world that I'm this comfortable with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about somebody that you're really uncomfortable with?
I mean, maybe.
It might break down some barriers.
Yeah, I bet it would.
Oh.
Probably.
Cool.
mean, here's the thing. There's like not that many people that I can think of off the top of my head that I'm super uncomfortable with.
Yeah.
It's more like just big groups that I'm uncomfortable with. So
yeah,
I have to do that with a lot of people.
Yeah, that's true.
Cool.
Well,
what's been going on in your world?
In my world.
Yeah, it's been a while since we did one of these. It's been about a month since our last podcast. You've gone to Texas. You've come back. I went to Montana to do that photo shoot with Satisfy.
Satisfy. And when you're wearing all Satisfy gear right now, right?
Oh, except for my shorts. My shorts are my fun beach shorts.
But you have a t-shirt with a lot of holes in it.
Yeah, Moth Tech. Strategic cooling.
Oh, sick.
Yeah.
Honestly, they look really cool.
Yeah, and you've got your own version of Moth Tech, aka old shirt.
Yeah, check out my holes up here. You see that?
Yeah, it was so funny when we were watching the Eddy. This uncle came by, and the Eddy, the surf contest here, everybody is celebrating because it doesn't happen every year. It only happens when the surf is lining up in this specific window. And it had been a couple years, and this uncle was drinking with his buddies. It was like 10 a.m. He was already all bus, and he was like, "Oh, I got holes too. Look at my puka." It was so funny.
It was a really fun group.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a dope looking shirt. And you got a Satisfy hat. And how's those shoes? Let's see them.
The rocker.
Bring them up here, all the way up. Wow, look at that thing.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
So I actually haven't gotten to run in these yet, except for the photo shoot. But the ones that I were wearing, how it is with shoe samples, especially at a small company, it's hard to get sizes. So they only had the 10s, men's 10 available, which is the sample size.
So
which is yours.
They were too big.
Yeah, so they were too big. Plus, it was so cold in Montana. I mean, a lot of days it was a high of 10 degrees. And so it impacted how the foam felt. So in between the super cold weather and them being men's 10s, I'm a woman's 9, so that's like roughly 2 sizes too big. I couldn't tell. But tomorrow I'm taking them out. I have 4 hours with 4 by 20 minutes at tempo, and I am taking them out for the very first run on this. Yeah, I'll bring extra shoes just in case. I've heard really good things from my teammates that have been testing them. With Satisfy, I'm under no obligation to wear them if they don't work for me because, they only have one shoe, and I think that's something really cool. But so far, so good, and just walking around in them, and that instep feel is pretty important. And apparently a lot of European companies don't worry about that instep feel. So that's one thing
you're so advanced with your shoes. What you're saying is going right over my head. And when you talk like this, I'm like, wow, you're so picky about your shoes.
I know.
It's honestly pretty cool because you spent tens of thousands of hours in shoes running. I
know. Well, and it's crazy because this is the first time since 2016, even though Satisfy makes a shoe. And I do think I'll like it. And if things go well tomorrow, I'll probably race in it because I haven't found a shoe yet that I really like. But that's the thing, is that this is the first time since 2016 that I've been able to wear any shoe that I want. And that, it's kind of overwhelming. It's something that I was really, really excited about. And now that I'm a couple months down the line, I'm like, wow, there's so many shoe choices. There's so much tech in shoes. And it's super cool. But I also have decision fatigue a little bit, especially since I haven't found one that I like yet.
Well, hopefully that's the one because, Satisfy is rad.
I know.
In all other ways.
And hopefully a lot of tech went into this shoe. Too. Yeah. Brees, who mostly designed the shoe, and I might mess this up, but if I do, I'm sure they'll forgive me. But Brees designed the shoe first, started developing it, and then brought on John Mark, who I worked with a little bit at Solomon when I was there, and then he went on to the North Face and then started working with Satisfy in the last year. But apparently Brees and Stian, my teammate, told me this. Apparently, Jean-Marc told Brees, man, you did everything right in the shoe. We don't have to tweak much before it goes to market. And that is honestly huge props to Brees for doing that, having not a lot of shoe knowledge and just had a vision.
Well, it sounds like he brought on some seasoned pros that know what they're doing.
Yeah, well, this is before Jean-Marc came on. Jean-Marc actually didn't, the shoe had already been... several prototypes have been already developed by the time Jean-Marc, the pro, came on. But,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, he vetted it, and then
Totally.
sometimes like somebody who's really inexperienced can be extra creative, and then the super experienced person, you know, they get in their lane and they're a little bit less creative because they know what works. So that might be a really cool, like, you know,
Intersection.
cross section of those guys.
What's cool about it is it's like art and science coming together. Like Jean-Marc is super technical with his approach to making shoes and what the athlete wants. And, you know, he's been he worked for Solomon, I think, for like 25 years or something, and then did another 2 with North Face. But Breeze, you know, he's just developing it based on what he wants in a shoe and what he thinks feels good, and like describing it to people and having people develop the foam based on that. And then so it's like art and technology meets. And I think that is something that's super cool about Satisfy.
Yeah. They are sexy shoes.
Yeah, they're sexy shoes. Yeah. It's been fun getting to know the team. Yeah, I spent like a super intimate 10 days in a house with Brees, the founder and president of the company, and Pierre, the creative director, Lila, who they brought on, who's a producer, Nolan is a stylist. And I was saying, we're going on a tangent. We didn't plan on talking about this, but I forgot that this happened between the last time we talked and now. And I was saying that all the brands that I've worked with before, they've been like running focused first, but you know, creative second. You know, the style was secondary. And Brees worked in fashion for a really long time, owned a jeans company that blew up in Paris, and then fell in love with running. And so he, you know, he holds performance and style and creativity in the same regard. And it's crazy working under that environment instead. And it's been really fun.
It's pretty cool. Yeah. You were telling me off the air that it was like, you know, the house was like full of artists almost. It was like a lot of creative energy in there.
Totally. And a lot of times when I'm in these settings, like you know, working with other brands in the past, like I have felt like a creative in that group. And with this group, I felt like I was just a fly on the wall learning and watching. It's almost like, you know, I'm a fan of music, but don't really play anything, have dabbled in different things. But, you know, when you watch a musician, it's amazing. You know, it's like watching a different language, a different way of communicating. And that's the same thing with watching these guys on the Satisfy team.
That's so cool.
You know, they're so creatively minded. It's just a completely different way of how brains work.
Yeah. Well, fashion is definitely an art form that, you know, is a little different than physiology of running and training somebody to be a runner. So like, yeah, art in all of its different avenues and aspects is so unique and cool. I love art. And there's so many different types of art, you know, somebody can get creative in so many different ways, from like woodworking to painting to music. Even people that like surfing, like some of the surfers out here, they're like artists with how they surf. It's really
totally
creative.
And you know, a lot of runners, including myself, like we were just talking about this on our walk, is running often feels like my expression of art, you know, and just like how I move my body, where I'm doing it. You know, sometimes on runs, it's like this immense feeling of moving with the world, and that feels like art to me, you know, and I know a lot of runners feel the same thing, and so it is really cool to bring it all together. I'm so excited to see how this brand grows, and you know, we're definitely in an era of that boutique challenger brand right now. There's a lot of different small brands coming to the top, but I think, you know, I found out that Satisfy had 250 people at a group run, at a long, slow distance LSD run in France. Like, that is insane.
That's cool.
Yeah, 250 people.
For like a grassroots like brand to just throw a group run, and now they have 250 people. That's a huge run.
I've never been to a group run that big.
That's like a marathon.
I've been to a lot.
Run.
Yeah, like a small race.
Yeah.
Some of the races I've raced have had 250 people in them. You know,
That's cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Well, let's see what else has been new.
You broke a board today.
Oh yeah, for me, I had this really weird ear infection. I think it was just from surfing so much, like in the
Yeah,
last
you went
month.
on a bender.
Yeah, there's this swell bender that came through, and so I was surfing a lot, and then I ended up with this ear infection. Went off to Texas to do some work for a couple weeks, got rid of the ear infection. I came back, and after my first time surfing, like first time back in the water, the ear infection came right back. So I was like, crap, like I was so bummed because I was gonna miss a bunch of surf again. So, or you know.
You did.
Could be worse, but I did miss some surf, and so I took the ear drops and some antibiotics, and then today I was like, I'm gonna go surfing again for the first time in like, a week. So that feels like an eternity for me. And
but it's been a week since you surfed the last time, but then it was like 3 weeks before that.
Yeah, so
it's been a while.
Yeah, so I was really excited to go surfing, and out there, paddled out around 10 a.m. I think 10:07 a.m. I know because I rewinded the Surfline rewind and was able to see the wave that I caught. And the first wave I got, after being out in the water for 7 minutes, I pull into this little left-hand barrel and I wipe out. And it wasn't even a big wave, but I would come up out of the water and my board is snapped in two. So I snapped my board, first wave of the day.
Yeah, what I was thinking,
man.
that sucks. What I was thinking, so last night you're learning the surf here and learning different techniques, how to avoid injury in some of these heavier sets and dangerous spots like pipeline. And we were talking about last night how you can avoid, if the barrel is closing out, and correct me if I'm saying this wrong, but if the barrel is closing out, you can jump in a hole. So it spits you out instead of you getting crushed by the lip of the wave.
Yeah. It's like, that's like kind of advanced, like how to escape the wave, grabbing you and like throwing you over the falls. And there's a way that you can kind of like jump down into the ocean, like into the water.
What's that hole doing? You described it to me last night.
It's basically like the lip of the wave goes over and it lands on the surface of the ocean, like on the water, and the impact of it, the wave is pushing this way. The impact of the lip is super heavy, because think about each gallon of water weighs like 8 pounds. And then there's thousands of gallons of water coming from, I don't know, 7, 8, 10 feet in the air, slamming into the water. It kind of like pushes down super aggressively, and it kind of like impacts a little bit. There's like almost like a hole right behind the lip inside the barrel.
And then if you jump in that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was one of our neighbors posted a really awesome video of him. He's a pro surfer, so I watched his videos and I study him, like, wow, what he just did. Like, I was rewinding, like, he just jumped in that hole and he popped right out the back, no problem. Like, so that is like, that's a high level maneuver that he did. So I was really impressed.
So I was wondering, if you had jumped in the hole before the barrel closed out today, do you think you would have avoided your board breaking?
This was I don't think so, because this was such a small wave. It was not a very powerful wave. I've wiped out in like such bigger, like gnarlier waves than this with that same board, and where I've seen like a lip of a wave, like it's gonna break on me, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna ditch the board, I'm trying to save myself. And the board stayed in one piece. And today, like in this little pipsqueak of a wave comparatively, I come up and my board's in two pieces. I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? Because this board withstood a lot before. So,
dude, which board was it again?
Oh,
was it what you call your high performance shortboard? Or was it your mid-size?
it's like a high performance shortboard.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A 6'6", Almeric.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a really good board.
Yeah. The cool thing about here is you can buy boards from like old boards from a lot of pros for super cheap.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I'm always
There's
looking.
not good deals right now, but I bet in a month.
You have to sniff out the deals.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I think when we first moved here, you scored with some just insane deals. I mean, that first pre-snap that you got, like,
yeah, I got this
that lasted
board,
you a year.
This board that had been fixed and it was previously snapped. But, you know, that's the thing. It was already snapped at one point, which is, it reduces the value. But
Yeah,
it like cuts the value in half.
bucks.
So.
But
anyway,
you had it for like a year.
Yeah. Anyways, we could talk all day about my board collecting.
Yeah.
If you have any short boards for sale between the lengths of 5'10" and 6'6", then let me know, because I'm in the market.
Yeah, go in the comments. 2 birds, 1 stone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways, we
Yeah.
were going to talk about some other fun and exciting,
stuff. But I'm going to give a training update first.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. I'm just so excited about one of the big topics that we have coming up in this podcast.
It's juicy.
It's something that I've been honing for years now.
Yeah. Well, I guess the training update isn't, we don't have to talk about it too long, but you crewed me.
We should talk about it, because that's sick too.
Yeah. Well, especially because you got to crew me for a workout that I did recently. And I did the same workout or really similar in September. And I did it much faster this time. An hour at zone 3 or steady state. I typically train pretty specifically off RPE, but I was using heart rate to guide me, just trying to keep my heart rate around 165.
RPE means rate of perceived effort.
Yeah, rate of perceived effort. Thank you. My interpreter.
Coach Kat,
Yeah.
getting ahead of me sometimes. I have to make sure that everyone else is caught up too.
Yeah, thank you. I think most of the listeners are my athletes, which is awesome. Or people I've coached before.
All right. Well, we love you guys.
Yeah, we love you guys. RPE, but honestly, Carson, good job, because as we grow, we're going to need you to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I did it like quite a bit faster than I did last time, so much so that I kind of had to improvise. I had to add a little section, go by the Mokalee airport to add an extra 1.5 miles. Just because I was going to hit the end of the road before I ran out of time. So that was pretty exciting. Yeah, Madeira 85K, my first race of the season, is about 6 weeks away. I've got 2 more weeks of training here, and then I head to Flagstaff for 2 weeks, where I'm going to go train in the canyon, which is pretty Madeira specific. It feels good to be focused and to just... I'm not running super high mileage right now. I'm running just like consistent 70s, but this is maybe the first time in a really long time that I've had like 12 weeks of 70-mile weeks. So let's go.
Yeah, you're looking strong.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're going to go train in the canyon, not just any canyon.
Yeah, the canyon.
The Grand Canyon?
Grand Canyon.
The grand one.
The grand one.
The
Probably,
Grand Canyon.
Top 3 favorite places, probably top 2 favorite places to run in the whole entire world. That place is really special to me.
Wow.
I've done 11 total double crossings.
That's awesome.
I think
I got to get on one of those. I've never done a Grand Canyon crossing.
You've only been in the canyon.
I've only been in the canyon.
You've never been. He's never seen the Grand Canyon from one of the rims, because you only saw it from a whitewater kayak.
My first and only time seeing it was from a whitewater kayak going through it. So that was pretty crazy. But I hear seeing it from the rim is like unreal, because you get to see the full expanse of how big it is.
Yeah.
But in the kayak, oh man, it was 25 days in there, and it was like
in January.
That was a vision quest.
so cold there in January. I once did a photo shoot there in February, and it was, I mean, granted it was the rim, but it was like 15 degrees, high of 15.
Yeah.
So
man, what a beautiful place.
Yeah, so special, so much good mana there. It's like really amazing.
One of the craziest things about the canyon that I always tell people is that there's this one geological feature called the Great Unconformity. And it basically, at one point, middle of the trip, there's this layer of rock with like an obvious boundary between the layer above it. And they're like obviously two different types of rock, one on the bottom, one on the top. And the rock on the bottom is 1.2 billion years older than the rock that's immediately on top of it. And to see that sort of difference in time just between one rock and the other, that's a quarter of the Earth's lifespan, which is like, to me, like just so mind-boggling.
I can't even conceptualize that.
Yeah, it's a really cool thing to see. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Made me think of that song we were singing about time earlier today.
Oh, yeah. Time keeps on slipping
into the future. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so excited to go back there. Maybe you can come visit one day and we can do a double crossing. Probably not a double crossing, but we can maybe do a big run.
Yeah, you're like, wait a second, my husband is a wuss.
You're not a wuss.
He's not going to do that.
But I don't want you to get hurt. We're doing our first bigger training run together that we've done a long time, probably since I took you on a 25-mile run in Texas around this time last year when you were also very undertrained. Do you remember that?
Oh, that was a year ago?
Yeah, that was about a year ago.
Well, yeah. I have not been in running shape lately. I've been in surfing shape. So
I know.
That's my excuse.
Yeah.
But I'll get back there.
Yeah,
someday.
You'll get back there. You're getting back there already.
Yeah, we're going to do Speed Goat 28K.
Yeah.
With my buddy Marty. That'll be really fun.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to do the 50K.
You're going to do the 50K, yeah.
I know. I'm super excited. I've done that 50K twice.
Woohoo.
It was actually my first time getting a paycheck from a race. Yeah.
Big money.
Big money. Yeah.
Speed Goat.
And it was a good amount of money too. I got fifth and I made like $1,000.
Oh.
I was like so stoked.
Nice.
It was a lot of money for me.
Yeah.
Still, it's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money for me right now. I could buy like 2 surfboards from that.
Two used.
North Shore Surf Shop.
Maybe 3, depending on the condition.
Yeah.
Maybe 10.
If I get a few pre-snaps, yeah, it'd be really cheap.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
cool.
What else do you have to say about your training?
Yeah, nothing much, except I'm excited to run with you on Sunday. We're going to do a 13-mile trail run with about 4,000 feet of vert.
Yep. I'm not sweating. You're sweating.
Last time we did this, I was just recovering from fixing my hip, and so you carried, and wearing a pack put extra pressure on my hip, so you carried all of our fluid and gels, and it took us like 4.5 hours.
Yeah, that was beyond my pay grade.
Yeah, you were destroyed.
Yeah.
that was for your 30th birthday a couple years ago.
Wow, what a present.
Yeah, I know. You're welcome. Training my husband.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Gotta exercise your husband.
Yeah, exercise my husband, excuse me.
Okay, well, the moment we've all been waiting for. I know that I've been really excited to talk about this.
Yeah.
And it's something I've been focusing on quite a lot, which is how to be the best crew you can possibly be for your ultra runner.
Yeah, for the ultra runner in your life.
Yep.
You know, this kind of came about because one of my athletes is pretty new to ultra running. She's a total badass. She has done a lot of backpacking and through hiking. She actually hiked the PCT several years ago. But so she's no stranger to endurance events, but her family is coming out for the first time, including her husband, to crew her very first 100-miler. They're feeling out of their depths. And she requested this. So I think this will be a really fun topic. And it'll be cool just to go down memory lane because we've learned a lot about working together as a team.
Yeah, and it's a really good team building experience. And it's not easy.
Yeah.
You know, crewing is not easy. Kat sometimes will say, "Oh, crewing is harder than running," and
which I fully believe.
I don't think that's real, but it's it's kind of close. Like it's not
Yeah,
easy.
it's
It's not easy.
I think
Mentally, there's a lot more thing. You're in charge of keeping track of everything.
give it another year. I bet you'll start to agree with me. You'll be like, yeah, it's fucking way harder.
Yeah.
Maybe you just got to do another ultra.
It's definitely, I mean, it's a job, but it's a really fun, cool experience.
Yeah, and I think that's the cool thing here is I say it all the time, and I just want to reiterate it, is that this is, you know, no matter who you are, if you have a crew going into a race, especially in this situation where, you know, it's not just the crewing. It's like when I come back from a run yesterday, I had a 2-hour run, and then I had to get right on like 4 hours of meetings, and you had a giant smoothie waiting for me that I could refill, and you brought me water during my meetings and stuff. Like that is also part of the crew, and so it's truly a team. Not everybody gets that, but it's
that's
truly
me being a good husband.
a team effort. Yeah, but it's also, you know, you really also investing in the recovery stuff and seeing how important it is.
It's professional. It's a write-off.
Yeah, it's a write-off.
All right. So number 1, we kind of went through a little bit of a list. So
yeah, top 5 things that we would have given you 4 years ago when you started doing this for me.
Yeah. So number 1 is, you know, make sure that you have all of your required gear lined up.
Yeah. And,
you know, this is a big responsibility for the athlete too. It's not just the crew.
Yeah.
But, you know, sometimes we'll end up in a place where I'm as Kat's crew, she's trying to relax and like save up all of her energy for the race. So I will go out and find extra required gear that she may have forgotten. But that being said, sometimes depending on where the race is, it's really hard to find this required gear. You know, like one time we went to Mexico and
Puerto Vallarta.
Yeah.
Famously the craziest race in UTMB series history.
Yeah. Are they not holding it anymore?
No, they stopped. Last year was the last year that they did it, but they
just had been crushing too many souls out there. So
dude, well, the first year, the inaugural year, was just like the Wild West.
It was crazy. And one of the required gears was gaiters, like that you put around your calf to keep mud from going in your boot or in your shoe. And I was in my defense before he goes on and says that I wasn't prepared. I was ill prepared, but I was at a time where I was coaching too many athletes at the time. Also I had been working for Method 7, the sunglass company. So I was their athlete manager, and yeah. Go ahead and make as many excuses as you want.
I was like, oh, I'm going to get these gaiters later this week. I'm going to get these gaiters later this week. All of a sudden it's Wednesday. We're about to fly to the race. And I'm like, oh, I'll buy them in Mexico. Then guess who ends up looking for them? Because I'm also working in Mexico. Not a good excuse.
We've all heard that.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, I ran out of time. Anyways, that being said, if your athlete is like Kat or me, I mean, I procrastinate also. It's not only your.
And I'm much better at it now.
Yeah. So that being said, check in with your athlete, like, you know, before you all go out on the race and say, hey, have you gone through all of the required gear and making sure that you have it? Because it would have been a lot easier to find gaiters in Boulder, Colorado than in Puerto Vallarta, where nobody knew what gaiters were. And I had to fashion some out of, I literally cut up an old like inner tube.
Like for a pool,
you know? Cut
like
this
a donut inner tube.
I was like, you know, if I fashion this rope in around it, you could snug it up to your leg, and then it could hang down around your shoe, and that's a good gaiter. You know, if we get caught without required gear, you know, you could be disqualified.
DQ'd. And I was worried they weren't going to accept them, so we're like driving up to the start. I think we got them the day, it was a 6 p.m. start, so the day of, and I
made them the day before.
Oh, you made them the day before. Okay. So we're driving up to the start. We don't know anything about this race. And you're like, okay, babe, like, here's the gaiter. Honestly, you're amazing. You're like, here's the gaiter. And it's cut up piece of inner tube. And you're like, and all you got to do is use this rope and secure it around your ankle and just tell them that. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, just have confidence, because I mean, a lot of the people that were throwing this race have never seen an ultra marathon race before. Like it was an inaugural race that
where nobody even knew what ultra running was.
The trail didn't exist a week ago.
Yeah, the trail. Right? No, days before. I had an athlete that I was coaching who was running the 100K, and she went on a shakeout run before we got there on like the Tuesday, like it was like the day before we got there, and she was like, there's no trail here, and then a couple days before they just macheted the trees down. Yeah, it's crazy.
So yeah, the required gear, that's huge. I mean, also gear that that your athlete will need, and talk about this with them.
Yeah, check in with your athlete, because honestly, Carson is amazing, and I have gotten a lot better about this. I think there were some reasons that we'll talk about a little later that I was not, I was just like, my mind wasn't, and my heart wasn't in racing at the time. So obviously I wasn't putting in the effort that I needed to, but this, this responsibility does and should also fall on the athlete. Yeah. And so, but it's a good idea for you as a crew.
It should. Yeah, you're right. All right. So
but you check in with the athlete.
Yeah, definitely.
Just give them a nudge.
Check in, give them a nudge. You never know. They might be in, a time in their life when they're really busy and everything is super hectic. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I have this race. Yeah. And, they're training a lot. So take a little bit of pity on them. Make sure you have, extra lube, especially for longer races. And, if your athlete sweats, like they will need to try to make sure they don't get rash in their armpits, between their legs, between their butt cheeks.
Yeah, between the butt cheeks. My very first 100, Bryce 100, I was waddling the next day because of the butt cheek chafe. It was bad.
Totally. I mean, that can... Yeah,
that you too, after Never Summer. Deal.
So, yeah, we always take, a big bottle, a big thing of, like, Vaseline with us. Extra socks, extra shoes, extra layers, a towel. It can totally change the game if you like took a big spill and it's been raining and you're like over it. And, if the athlete is in this mindset where they're like, oh, I'm just like in such a funk, for them to like take off all those old clothes, wipe down with a towel, cowboy shower, whatever, put on new clothes, new socks, new shoes, it can like make you feel like a new person kind of.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty good one. Sometimes.
I've never actually changed clothes with you though, I don't think, but
you have once.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was like a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Okay. Another trick that you do is you wet a say a lot of these really hot races, excuse me, a lot of these hot races, but there's, especially in Europe, a lot of times they won't have ice. You will just get a pareo, and wet it and put it on top of me every single time I'm at an aid station. And that has saved me a couple times.
Mm-hmm. It's basically like a wet towel.
Yeah, a wet towel.
Like a light towel.
Yeah.
Let's see, sunscreen or like chapstick. That's really good to have. Your earbuds in case if they're allowed and if you want them. Which sometimes if you're feeling like you're in a funk, jamming some like whatever your pump up tunes are can really help. External battery, like, so back in Mexico, that race took so long.
2 nights. I went through 2 full nights.
2 full nights. It was 36 hours. And so
almost 37.
Yeah. You finished second in almost 37 hours, which is like absurd. So there was a lot of people out there for 2 full days. And during that time I was able to drive my car around and like charge things up, but there was after a while your phone dies, her watch died, like we had to like figure out how to recharge certain devices, so having an external battery pack can sometimes be a lifesaver.
Yeah. And pro tip for people who are racing and crew to communicate is, I think one of the most underrated pieces of gear is a good headlamp. I love Petzl. I work with them for a long time. I'm no longer an athlete for them, but I still just am obsessed with their product. The Petzl now is super bright, and what I have Carson do, but the battery doesn't last super long on full gas. So, and I my eyes aren't super great, especially at night, and so I need that full gas. And so Carson at every single aid station while I'm putting gels in my pack will change my headlamp battery. And that's one of the most help, especially for these super, super long nights. One of the most helpful things, because, you know, trying to see, part of the thing that you're fighting is the mental fatigue, and you want to eliminate as much of that as you possibly can. And trying to see on technical trail on a dim setting in your headlamp is shooting yourself in the foot, and having a really, really bright headlamp is an advantage. And can really, really reduce some of that mental fatigue. So
totally. And, you know, if you go backpacking or camping, or if you like to grill at night, sometimes like I do, like having a nice headlamp is good no matter what. So it's honestly a great investment. Yeah. And, you know, favorite snacks of the athlete. So you love rice, right? And like making sure that sometimes I'll cook rice before the race. I'll like find a way.
Not sometimes, almost every single time.
Yeah. Or if I don't cook it, I'll buy it from like a store, you know, or like a Chinese restaurant or something. So, you know, talking about that.
Like what's something that, like, ask your athlete, like what's something that you've been using in training that you can eat no matter what? And for me, I know that's rice. I don't really train with it that often, but I have been racing ultras since 2014, so I kind of know. And you just, you know, if I'm low on calories or if I'm puking up gels, which happens a lot for me, I can just shovel rice down my gullet for 2 minutes, and it's super helpful, and it's kind of a reset.
And yeah, you put tamari on it. It's a little bit of
sodium,
electrolytes. Yeah. That's good. But yeah, like, you know, some people are like, oh, when I start bonking, I need like a Rice Krispie treat. And so if you have a couple of those on hand and they come into the spot, the cruise station, and they're having a hard time, you know, a Rice Krispie treat can help them a lot.
Yeah.
So that's all up to their own preference.
Yeah. All right. Next,
that's number 1.
Yeah.
Nice. That was pretty good and in depth. Okay. So number 2, this one's kind of hardcore. You got to be a hard ass sometimes. And, you know, barring injury, don't be afraid to push your loved one to like keep going. And, you know, if they're like, oh, I fell and, you know, my knee really doesn't feel right, like that's not a time you should push them. But if they're like talking down to themselves and be like, oh, like if they're talking themselves down, if they're saying, oh, I just don't think I can do it, like I don't know if I can do it, you know, a lot of times they need calories. Almost every single time they need calories. But also sometimes you got to be a hard ass and give them a swift kick in the ass and be like, I don't want to hear these excuses, you know, eat this, get out there. And at times Kat has been talking down on herself in the middle of the race, and like, if you won't stop, I have to be like, all right, whatever, I'll see you at the next one. I
know. Which, like, on that, when you first started crewing these things, and I was having a really hard day there, and I'd had a bunch of hard days, you know, as you guys know, I've just had a hard couple years, but you know, this was in 2021 when you crewed CCC for me. You were shocked. You were worried about me because I was like, I don't think I can do this. You know? And turns out, I think part of it was I was relying on spring, and I was taking a lot of spring energy gels, and I'd run out of all my gels really, really early. Yeah. So I think that had a big...
And spring had like 20% of the calories that they claimed they
actually did. Yeah.
So that was terrible. But, you know, and... Also, I'm like a super caring guy. I mean, I'm not somebody who starts off by being a hard ass. So, and you know, that's good too. You also have to like show compassion, be like, how are you doing? Like, make sure you're doing good.
You shouldn't show me too much compassion.
But yeah, I mean, if you come in and you're like, oh, I really need this and that, and like and you're thinking tactically, it's game time. But if I can tell you're just continuing to spiral, I just, I'm the one that has to be like, okay, I'm the operator, do this, this, and this, and get out.
Yeah.
And if I tell you, you'll do it.
Totally. I
know.
That's something that my coaches always say is like, I'm coachable, and sometimes I just need direction. If I'm having a hard time, a lot of times it's like because I don't know how to dig myself out of the hole. But something that I tell my athletes when, especially athletes who have had a long list of DNFs that aren't due to injury, that are due to like, I don't know what happened. I tell them, like, if every single step that you take and every single time that the DNF seems like a viable option, you should ask yourself, is it physically possible to keep going, * without injuring myself? And if it is possible, then you should. And, Carson, if he sees me and I'm not injured, which a lot of times I have been injured, but a lot of times I haven't. And on the times I haven't been injured, if I've been like, I don't know if I can do this, he's been like, you can, goodbye. Like, I'll see you later.
Yeah. I mean, it's a long journey out there. I mean, sometimes you're going for 15, 20, 30 hours, and your mind can like take such huge peaks and valleys during that time. And during those valleys, like sometimes they just have to keep moving, and nothing you say or do will help your athlete. And you just have to
nothing except eat and leave. Yeah,
which brings us to our third huge bullet, and we kind of have been touching on it, but it's so important. Combating any strong emotion or downfall usually involves giving your athlete calories and making sure that they consume them.
And hydration with the calories, because without the hydration, it's hard to process those carbohydrates. Mm-hmm. But the lack of calories is the reason you're getting emotional. And I mean any emotion, including happiness. And I tell my athletes this all the time. Like, if you feel giddy, if you're like, oh my God, this place is so beautiful, I'm going to cry, calories. Calories. I don't care if you're happy. That emotion is still too emotional. You need food. And an awesome example of this, it's one of my favorite stories ever. And how could it not be? It was, we weren't married yet. You were running your first 100K ever, the gnarly Never Summer 100K. Shout out NAR runners, Nick Clark.
Very hard.
Yeah, super hard. It's 100K with like just under 15,000 feet of vert. And this 15,000 feet of vert, it's basically all, I think 13,000 of it is in the first 40 miles, so, or like 45 miles. Yeah, so it's the
very
stacked. Steep. Yeah. And,
very beautiful though.
Super beautiful.
Such a beautiful race. And yeah. So wait, what happened? I went up Diamond Peak, which is the tallest point. It's
the highest point, and it's such a steep climb.
It's like 13,000 foot mountain or something. Yeah. And then
at like 40% grade on the way up.
Oh man, it's so steep. Like you're using your hands.
Yeah.
And your feet. Or I was. Yeah. And so, going up to the top of Diamond Peak, I saw these people playing music, and they had full on instruments, like a stand-up bass, and one guy had like a fiddle, and like another guy had a guitar, and they were playing music, and it was just at the top of the mountain. It was so beautiful, and there was music and people like being merry and giving out, drinks and food, and I started crying because I just thought it was so beautiful. I was like, this is life. Like, life is so beautiful. This is amazing. And it was very emotional. And then I came down to the aid station and saw y'all. And tell me again what I said.
Yeah. So you sit in the camp chair and you're like you're giddy to be around us again, because you and your buddy Bo who was also doing the 100K. That's where you guys had separated. So you'd been separate for a little while. You hadn't been around people, and you're a super social guy. You're visibly giddy to see us, like so happy. You know how ultra runners, especially if they're low on calories, they seem kind of drunk. That's how he was. We usher him into a camp chair. I immediately know he needs food, but he all of a sudden he's in the chair and he's looking at me, and all of a sudden he's talking to his friend, and he all of a sudden starts crying and says, "You're my favorite story." He's like, "She's just so hot."
The cat's just look at her. She's just so hot. Like,
yeah.
I can't even. And that's when you knew I had a problem.
That's
when you're like,
this boy.
He needs calories.
I was like very happy, but also this is dire.
Yeah. Also, he's on a downward spiral.
Yeah, we gotta remedy this fast.
Yeah, and you know that. I was having a happy moment there, but it can be just as easily, it can turn south, and you're like spiraling in an unhappy way.
Yeah.
But you know, it's not easy to like maintain your levels out there, and you have to maintain, because especially if you're like me, and I mean, like anyone, but I burn through calories so fast. I probably burn, like, on a big race like that, what do you think? Like 600 to 700 calories an hour?
Yeah, at least. Yeah, probably 7. I've never seen anybody with such a fast metabolism. I mean, you have a hard time maintaining, even on a day where you're not active, you can't maintain your energy levels. Like you go through major bonks all the time in just everyday life.
We both do. We've been discovering juice boxes for like when things are getting dire.
Yeah.
They'll pull you out.
I know. Juice renaissance.
Yeah, their blood sugar's crashing.
Yeah, it's honestly great.
Fire up a juice box and then you're back on, baby.
Bada bing, bada boom. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, anything more to add to that one?
Yeah, just I think the important thing is we already talked about, is the happy emotions too. You know, those that wave. If you get just like an immense wave of gratitude, that is awesome. More calories. Mm-hmm. If you're really hurting, and you know, another thing too is that if you're, say, 20 miles in and you're like, wow, my quads feel trashed, they feel extra trashed right now, that's probably hydration and calories, you know, but mostly hydration there too. Mm-hmm. So, you know, almost anything in these ultras, any major low can be pointed to calories and hydration. So count the wrappers as a crew member, count the wrappers in your runner's pack. Make sure they're eating, make sure that your runner has a nutrition plan, and check in throughout the race to see if they're following it. It's as an athlete, it takes a lot of discipline during a race to follow through on your nutrition plan. So, you know, check in with them. And if they're not, you know, that's another time where you have to be a hard ass. You have to be like, you are not going to finish this race. You're not going to meet your goals if you don't get your shit together and eat food. Oh, you're nauseous? Let's figure out why. Don't just start rejecting stuff. And sometimes what you need to get over that is a big old puke. So, you know, just because you're nauseous isn't a reason to just stop. That's
gnarly. I've seen Kat throw up and then eat something right away. It's like, oh my God. And, you know, for me, like a few years ago, I wouldn't even have known, like, oh, calories, I'll have a burger. But like, we're specifically talking about carbohydrates, like fast burning calories for the most part.
Yeah. And it's a little bit different. Say you're racing something like UTMB and you're moving a little bit slower. I find at a race like that I even crave some fats and proteins, just because the movement is slower. It seems to be more fat burning. But like a race like Leadville, for example, where it's so much running, you know, there is Hope Pass, but so much running, you're at altitude, you just need more glycogen. And so that is a race that I think should be gel heavy, or at least carbohydrate heavy and simple carbohydrate heavy. Yeah. You know, I remember my first 100, I was doing the whole thing off, what are they called? they're pro bars. They're like 400 calorie pro bars.
Like protein bars?
No, they're called pro bars.
Okay.
And they're meal bars, and they have so much fiber in them, hence why my butt cheeks chafed.
Oh.
So gross. So
right.
gross.
Yeah.
And
nice. Do we have any pics?
I don't know. I should ask Sean. Sean
we don't have pics. We don't need to see that, but yeah. I mean, okay,
it was
so
gnarly.
Definitely, yeah. The type of calories plays a huge part.
Yeah. And
like slow burning versus fast burning. I mean, everyone's different, right? So like I could probably, if I'm doing a slower race and I'm not running my hardest the whole time, I probably will have more like high protein, higher fats.
But the thing is,
than otherwise. If I'm going really fast downhill, I need something that I can eat easily, that doesn't take a lot of energy to digest, and it will turn into energy really fast.
And the thing is everybody's different. But for almost everybody, if you're pushing that upper limit of what is possible for you, which is really hard to access, especially in these 100-mile races, because so much can go wrong. For everybody, you need carbohydrates. You know, it's carbs all day if you're pushing that. Meaning if you're going like zone 2 for 100 miles. But you know, if you're going out for, again, something like UTMB, something like Ure 100, which is a lot of hiking, eat a burger. I've had people eat burgers.
Yeah. I mean, if you need it, you got to go get it.
And listen to what you're craving too. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Cool. What's 3?
That was 3. So
okay.
Now we are on 4, which is, as crew, you got to take care of yourself too.
Yeah.
And like, given that you're already helping to figure out all these logistics, talking through it, making sure that you have all these things organized, you might have a crew bag that's like pretty heavy, and you got to keep everything organized. You're like, okay, do I have everything? Do I have her gels? Do I have her electrolytes, batteries, socks, shoes, extra gear, rain gear, water, extra bottles, extra everything, you know? Sometimes it can make your head swim. So having like a list is really helpful. But on top of that, you have to find time to take care of yourself. And so,
which can be so hard in these things. That's why I think crewing is harder. You know, when I'm running, I'm just focused on me. And it's so much easier to be focused on and when in life do you go through life and all you think about all day is managing yourself? So few days.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty easy. You know, the running itself is hard, but that's all I'm in charge of is my effort in managing myself. But you are in charge of managing me and you and getting to aid stations. Those logistics can be crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, as the crew, I want to take any extra effort that she has to expend away. So I'm holding that. I'm managing it. All she has to do is be like, run this pace and don't stop, and eat and drink. And, she comes into the aid station. I'm like, all right, take everything out of your pack, put everything in your pack, check on her in the moment, say like, what do you need? Give it to her right then and there. If I can, try to take note on what she needs. Sometimes she'll even text me if
I'm really struggling.
If she needs something during the race, be like, all right, next aid station, I need this thing. And that, sometimes it's like a Coca-Cola, sometimes it's new socks. But, during all of this super crazy energy, it can be hard to take care of yourself. So you have to make sure you do. Otherwise, if you run out of energy or become dehydrated, you could become totally worthless for your athlete. And they need you a lot. Yeah, and also you don't want to hate the experience. I've crewed in pace before, and I don't want to say I've hated the experience. It's always really rewarding, but where I've been unable to function after, and that sucks because that takes away from the runner's experience, and I always felt really bad doing that. But and I didn't mean to, and it's just learning, but it's really easy, especially, ultra runners are giving bunch to
you know, it's almost like a stubbornness thing to be like, oh, I'm crewing, like I can't, like don't have time to do this. It's like putting the life mask on you first before you put it on your kid.
Yeah.
You know, you are the functioning adult in this situation. You know, your runner won't have all their facilities, and so you have to have all of yours.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes when your runner is out in the field and, you know, they're not scheduled to arrive at the earliest for another hour, I've been so hyper fixated before. I've waited there the whole hour, like, where is she? Where is she? But there is an hour, and you have to trust that there's at least an hour. And so if you trust that and you say, okay, well, there's a little spot right over there, I'm going to go get a burger and a beer and like chill out a little bit, it can really help. Or, you know, if there's 3-4 hours between aid stations and it's the middle of the night, you know, treat yourself to a nap. You know,
treat
that
yourself.
is really important.
Live a little.
Yeah. So, yeah, make sure you're there for your person ahead of time, just in case they're having like a unicorn day and all of a sudden they're like hitting the fastest possible time. Make sure you're there for them, because if you weren't, you wouldn't forgive yourself probably.
But here's the thing, even if you like at the earliest possible time is they come in an hour later, say they come in half an hour before that, you still have time to eat. You know, you still have time. Half an hour, you can be really efficient. And in fact, it's important for you to be efficient. And I think another important thing to bring up is that, especially if it's a spouse or family member, you know, after you've crewed me for some of these, you know, actually all of them for the most part, you've had to continue crewing me after because I've been puking for like a couple hours.
Yeah.
You know,
the crewing doesn't start at the race and it doesn't stop at the finish line. Like you have to, like I help Kat get all of her stuff together, make sure that she's spending as little energy as possible prior to the race. And then when you start the race, all that crewing, hullabaloo. And then after you finish the finish line, making sure that you're able to get home safe and like everything you need. Sometimes you're a wreck afterwards.
I know.
Oh man. Yeah. So it's a big job, and treat yourself.
Treat yourself. Yeah. And to the runners out there, you know, really appreciate your crew. I again, like it's so crazy. You know, that's why I say it's harder to crew. And like listening to everything that Carson does, I know it, I see it, and I appreciate it when it's happening. But it's still, even listening to it, I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, you know, at first I was kind of like, dang, I'm not getting like the kudos when like all these runners are like, you know, in the spotlight, and I'm like definitely a Leo like that. I'm like, oh yeah, like look at me, I'm doing cool stuff too. But you know, it's a good thing to remember that you're there to help your person, and that is a huge gift to them. And
it is a huge gift.
It's really nice to do that for people.
Yeah.
And also, that being said, it brings us into our fifth point. The fifth thing is, you know, really at the end of the day, you're doing this because you love them, or because you care about the sport, and you care about people pushing themselves. And, you know, that being said, there's more to life than racing. You want people to be able to live a happy and fulfilled life in the biggest way possible. And so if you witness your athlete self-sabotaging, or, you know, they feel all this pressure, like you're there crewing them, there's other people watching them, they have to keep going even though they feel like they might have something wrong with their body, or like an injury that could hurt them in the long term. You might have to tell them to stop, or like make sure that they take a real good look at what they're doing
and why they're doing it. Yeah,
and why they're doing it. Like, are you gonna just run on that injury and permanently hurt yourself? Because that isn't worth it. You can wait and run another day. And sometimes stepping away from a race that's going poorly is one of the hardest things.
Or not starting the race, you know, honestly.
Yeah.
And like that is something that, you know, again, is the responsibility of the athlete and not the crew. But if you have a loved one and you see if you have a loved one who's running and you see them spiraling before the race, or, you know, I think the biggest form of self-sabotage for people who are either injured or underprepared for a race, or feeling burnt out before the start. And, you know, all three of those things most often lead to DNFs. The most common way to self-sabotage that I've seen in myself and as a coach is lack of preparation, you know, which I totally did. And so if you have a loved one that's doing that and you're like, what the hell, dude? Like you're not prepping and it's putting more responsibility on me. What is going on? This is a big deal. You know, do you actually want to do that? That can be do you actually want to do this race? That can be a really important question, because, you know, if the athlete isn't excited about it, you know, and they're not prepping, there's a reason. And there's, you know, to do these insane races, whether it's, you know, I'd say like 50K to 100K, even like a marathon, you really have to want it. These things are hard and you have to decide over and over and again to do it. And, you know, if you don't want to do it, that's also fine. And you gotta respect that within yourself. And there's usually a reason, especially if you love the sport. And if you're doing it for the right reasons, like that love for it will come back. You will want to do it again, or you won't. And that's okay too.
Yeah. So, I mean, you went through a huge experience where you were pushing your body too hard for a long time while you had an injury. And that was because of this pressure that you're experiencing and this feeling of, you know, I have to get one more in. I have to achieve this amount.
I have to prove myself
before I have earned the chance to rest or take a break at all.
Yeah, or fix my hip. And,
yeah,
and I just look at the difference between my training now and my training then, and it just, you know, there was so much anxiety around all of my training then. You know, it wasn't just the race. It was like I was running away, and I've said this before, but it was like I was every single run running away from failure. And right now I'm, you know, every run, even the bad ones, I am genuinely having fun with the training, and it feels good, and I recognize the bad, you know, and I'm truly doing it because I want to, you know, because it feels good, and
because it's fun.
Yeah, because it's fun. Instead of doing it, I remember like running one day and then been like, okay, thank God I did it for the next day. I did it for today. I did the thing. And then laying in bed that night and being like, oh my God, and I just have to wake up and do it again, you know? And in this time, I was still signing up for races and I was still pushing myself. And I should have just been evaluating my why, probably rehabilitating some injuries, and not thinking about training and running unless I wanted to get out the door.
Yeah. So what happened after the New Zealand race, where you DNF'd because you were so injured, you were eating a lot of ibuprofen throughout the race.
Yeah.
And like as a crew, I didn't realize, for one, how much ibuprofen you're eating, but also how bad it was for you.
Yeah. By the way, I just want to say at this race, it was not a banned substance. Like it goes back and forth whether it is or isn't. In this specific race that I was running at the time, I think it changed, but it was not a banned substance.
Yeah, it's important to double check. Like each race is different, what they allow and what they don't allow. So make sure that your athlete's following the rules. And otherwise they could get DQ'd, which would be a really big bummer.
Best case, or banned from running.
Banned from running?
Or banned from racing. Yeah.
Sounds like they put you in prison.
I mean, basically, that would be like prison for me. I'd be so sad.
Yeah, that would be awful.
And which is like another thing to talk about is like, you know, this is a whole nother thing just for the pros that I've been way more aware of lately. And in fact, we're taking turmeric right now, and I'm considering stopping taking that one and buying one that's certified safe for sport. Not just considering, I'm going to order it, and I'm stopping taking that turmeric just because there's a that, you know, there, we don't know what's in the supplements, and and people are getting popped for, and who knows, you know, and you never know what these stories, but I'm a pretty trusting person. And not always, you know, like there's one track athlete that I hear her story and I'm a little skeptical, but there's one athlete that I was on the team with in Solomon. His name's Stian, and a different Stian than Satisfy Stian. And he got popped for something. And I'm, you know, and his story is just so scary because he, you know, is a world champion. There will always be an asterisk by his name now, even though his competition ban is over. But it was so crazy. It was like such a trace amount that and it wasn't even a drug that was proven performance enhancing. It was just a diuretic. And he couldn't even go to his daughter's gymnastic meets. His daughter's like younger than 10 years old. So anyway, I digress, but
yeah. So damn. Well, that's a little off the subject, but I mean, that's intense.
Something to pay attention to.
You should pay attention to that too. But what I was getting at with your New Zealand race, where she like basically I was pacing her the last 40 miles of it, and she basically passed out in my arms like at mile 85 in the dark. And
I like don't remember that.
You were and you tried to get back up a few times, and you passed out several times. And luckily, I was there to catch you each time. And we eventually got help and took you to the med tent, but you were injured, and like you didn't ever want to admit it. And, you know, the pressure was pushing you in a direction that was just really, really bad for your health.
Yeah.
And after that, I realized what exactly was happening, because I'm kind of new to the sport. I don't know exactly what what should be expected. But after that, I knew that wasn't good for you. And that's where as the crew and as your soon to be husband, we got married like a week later. I was like, listen, I'm not gonna help you anymore if you focus on your health and healing your body first, because the more you push yourself into this, it's like you're just gonna permanently damage your body.
Yeah.
And you know, running is supposed to be fun, and it is fun, and that's the reason why we all do it. And I'm looking at all of you pro athletes. Don't like run your body into the ground because you think you have to. You will run next year or the year after that, and you'll do it better than you are while you're injured.
You know, and there's the thing. And I know it's not just pro athletes that deal with this, because I coach, and you know, this is a big thing that we talk about, and you have to know your why. And if you're struggling to find your why, and you know, if even the good days are bad, or even, you know, when I'm running right now, even the bad days are kind of good, you know, and I just like am truly enjoying the process. And it's, you know, maybe I'm able to recognize this because it was just so starkly different when I was doing this sport for the wrong reasons, because I felt like I had to. And it's not just the external pressure, it was also the internal pressure. It's just and it's one of the hardest questions you have to ask yourself, and it's like, am I actually choosing this? You know, am I choosing this? And I think that was one of the most beautiful things that I had to work towards, was especially because after recovering from that, I was so out of shape, and it took 18 months to get back into shape. It took like 5 months to lose and 18 months to build back. And I had to choose, you know, and I wasn't fast, and still every day I had to choose, like, yes, I want to be here. Yes, I want to be here. And some days it was a harder question than others, but the more I did it and the more I just knocked on that door, the easier the choice was, until here I am. And like, that's even having to choose this sport over my ego, you know? And so if you're able to do that, and I think that was the big thing that was tossed up into it, is like, I had been at the top of the sport. And I know a lot of people get that way, even if it's like they're not comparing themselves to like winning Western States. It's just like, you know, oh my God, I've done so many hundreds. I should be able to do this. Why can't I finish 100? I'm going to just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. I feel like I should have to. This is part of my identity. It's like, it doesn't have to be, or it can be part of your identity and you can still take a step back. And I'm ranting now, but I think the important message here is, put the ego aside and ask yourself, do I actually want to do this? And the answer can be no. And chances are, if you say no for a little bit, you're going to want to do it again, but allowing yourself to say no and then building back, it's going to mean so much more. I've never loved running, and I've been running, for a really long time, and I don't think I've ever loved running the way I love it right now.
Yay. You love it. And yeah, you definitely didn't you couldn't say it wholeheartedly for a little while because
I was like, I have to run. And I was like tweaking out,
you felt like you had to. Yeah. And it was just painful work at that point.
Yeah.
And, but when it does become painful work, you should listen to your body and don't just keep beating your head against a wall because you feel like you have to like prove yourself. In my case, I've run almost my whole life too. And, starting in freshman year in high school of cross country. And, I would always like run really hard and train super hard and really diligently. And I would start off the first couple weeks at the beginning of the pack, like the front guys. And then as we kept progressing throughout the season, I stayed where I was the whole season and everyone else got faster and faster and faster. And, I later found out that I had a hole in my heart between my atria. That was a huge hole.
The size of an egg.
Yeah. So this 2.5 inch by 1.5 inch size hole that was just shunting blood. It was like wasting the oxygenated blood by sending it back to my lungs through this hole. My heart was like 65% efficient, 70% efficient. So, that's what the surgeon said. And basically I had this like physical limitation that I had no idea about. And I stopped running there for a while after high school. But once I got the hole patched up, it came back and it actually became a super amazing part of my life again. And it always has been there a little bit, but I've never felt like I was actually adept at it until now. I feel a lot better at it, even though I probably will never be I won't ever be a pro or anything because
that's not the point.
It's not my goal, but I love it now. And for a long time, it was very difficult. It was like unreasonably difficult. Yeah. And, there was a physical reason. Yeah. So
also I think what we're saying, listen to your gut. If something feels off, go to a doctor. And if they say you're fine, go to another doctor and go to another doctor until you figure it out. Because sometimes it's not fine.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's not. And sometimes you got to meditate on it for like a long time.
A really long time.
Meditating is super helpful. Meditating is like one of my favorite things in the world.
Yeah, which is kind of how we started the episode, full circle. Yeah. Wasn't quite meditating, but it kind of felt like meditating.
Yeah. That was a trip staring into your eyes for 5 full minutes. Yeah.
I know, that was crazy.
I liked it.
Me too.
So
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for listening, guys. I hope you liked this episode. If you do, or even if you didn't really, let us know how we can do better in the comments.
Yeah. If you didn't, I'm coming after you.
Yeah. But also just let us know how we can improve because we have a lot of fun doing this and we want to keep putting these out.
Yeah.
And your support will make this possible in the long term. So comment. If you have anything that you want us to talk about, let us know either in my DMs or Carson's.
Yeah. Shout me out and hit me up if you have any crew questions. Share this with your crew. And if you have any races coming up this year, be like, all right, here's a little bit of homework. These people have been doing it. So if you want to know what it's like listen to it.
Yeah, but it's fun homework. So you got to know your audience.
Yeah, crewing is fun and homework is fun too. Wink, wink.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening.
Okay, I love you.
Bye.